The scrapyard lay under a pale orange sky where two dying suns cast their light over mountains of twisted steel. Broken carriers leaned like headstones, rusting turrets jutted from the dust like bones, and half-buried drones blinked faintly with sparks, their cores still sputtering centuries after their wars. The air smelled of scorched ozone and iron dust. For most people, this place was a graveyard of forgotten history. For Kieran, it was a hunting ground. He picked his way carefully between jagged hull plates and snapped wiring, his boots crunching on glass shards. His sister had been sick again, coughing up blood the night before. The meds cost more than he could dream of earning through labor, so scavenging was his only chance. Scrap dealers paid well for tech fragments, especially anything pre-collapse. It was dirty, dangerous work, but hunger had taught him not to care. He carried a small scanner strapped to his wrist, though most of the time it just pulsed dull green, confirming junk as nothing but junk. That day, however, the signal spiked red for the first time. Buried under a mound of corroded plating, something pulsed faintly with energy, steady and alive, like a heartbeat. Kieran's pulse quickened. Anything with an active core was worth a fortune. He dug with bare hands, ignoring the cuts as he tossed aside sharp metal. After 10 minutes of straining, his fingers struck something smooth. He tugged harder until a helmet slid free, caked in grime but unmistakably intact. It wasn't like any model he'd ever seen. Its curves were seamless, the visor a deep black with faint silver etchings circling its edges. It felt heavier than it should, its surface humming with faint static. The design was both elegant and brutal, as though it belonged to a forgotten era of war. He held it up, squinting at it under the suns. Then the visor flickered, a pale blue glow spread across its surface, symbols dancing across the glass. The sudden hum made the hair on his arms rise. His breath caught as the helmet spoke, a voice that resonated not in the air, but inside his head. "Welcome, Commander Velan. You died in battle 12 years ago." Kieran stumbled back, nearly dropping it. The words had been spoken in perfect English, crisp and calm, yet impossibly cold. His throat worked as he forced sound out. "What did you say?" The helmet didn't hesitate. "Biometric scan complete. DNA confirmed. You are Commander Elias Velan of the Terran Defense Armada. Flagship designation Iron Revenant. Fleet command protocols reinitialized. Resurrection recorded." Kieran shook his head violently. He wasn't Elias Velan. He wasn't a commander. He was a nobody from a starving colony who couldn't even afford bread. And yet the helmet spoke with such certainty it made doubt impossible. Before he could react further, the ground beneath him rumbled. The vibrations spread across the junkyard, rattling towers of scrap until they collapsed in avalanches of rusted metal. He dropped to one knee to keep balance as the earth groaned like something was stirring beneath it. Then a beam of red light erupted from deep within the junkyard, spearing straight into the sky. The clouds above shimmered, torn open as if the beam was calling something from the heavens. Kieran's wrist scanner went wild, alarms screeching. Above him, the horizon darkened as shapes descended from orbit. They were sleek, jagged silhouettes, their hulls glowing with crimson veins, moving in unnatural silence until their engines broke the air with a predatory roar. The helmet's voice returned, sharper now, tinged with urgency. "Commander, resurrection was not scheduled, but enemy signatures have returned. Prepare for engagement." Kieran's heart hammered. He wanted to throw the thing away, to run, to pretend none of this was real. But the alien ships in the sky silenced that thought. They weren't human. Their outlines alone told him that. He'd seen drawings of them in forbidden old texts, the monsters of myth. The destroyers said to have ended the golden age of man. Everyone thought those tales were legends, warnings carved into history to scare children. But here they were, blotting out the suns. Kieran looked down at the helmet still glowing in his hands. The cold light reflected in his wide eyes. He had come here searching for a scrap of metal to sell. Instead, he had unearthed something far greater, a war that had slept for 4 centuries. And now, because of him, it was waking up. The beam of red light continued to lance into the sky. a beacon piercing through both suns. The alien ships that had appeared in orbit shifted like predators drawn to blood. Kieran ducked behind a slab of twisted hull metal, gripping the helmet to his chest. His lungs burned as he struggled to calm his breath. The voice inside the helmet returned, no longer patient. "Commander Valen, the Iron Revenant fleet lies dormant beneath this ground. Activation sequence requires your command." "I told you, I'm not Valen," Kieran hissed through clenched teeth. His voice cracked, half with fear, half with denial. "Your DNA says otherwise. You carry his bloodline. Protocol recognizes no difference. The fleet will answer only to you." The words hammered through his mind. Bloodline? That explained the biometric match, but not the memories he didn't have. He had grown up in poverty, not power, and yet the helmet treated him as though he had only just returned from a long sleep. The ground shook again. Shards of scrap rolled down mounds of metal as enormous plates shifted beneath the surface. What he first thought were cliffs of debris split apart like massive doors. From below, hidden chambers began to open, releasing streams of sand and dust. Then came the shapes. Colossal hulls rose from the earth, their outlines jagged with age but intact, engines glowing faintly with blue fire. Warships, not the crude designs of the colony fleets, but vessels of impossible craftsmanship. Their metal gleamed as if untouched by centuries, as if time had been forced to bow before them. Kieran's eyes widened. He counted 6, then 10, then dozens, as the desert itself seemed to give birth to a fleet. Smaller crafts, sleek fighters, peeled from their bays, swarming into the air like hornets. The helmet's voice deepened, resonating with authority. "Iron Revenant Fleet, reactivation successful. Awaiting your orders, Commander." Kieran clutched at his hair. He wasn't ready for this. He had no training, no knowledge of fleet command. He scavenged for scraps to keep his sister alive. How could he command relics of war? Above, the alien ships began to descend. Their hulls pulsed with crimson veins that spread like sickness across their frames. They were alive, or at least part living, their movements fluid and organic. From their undersides, fire rained down. Bolts of searing plasma tore through the junkyard, turning metal towers into molten rivers. Kieran's survival instinct screamed at him to run. But he thought of his sister, waiting for him to return. If these things reached the colony, she wouldn't stand a chance. No one would. His hands shook as he raised the helmet. For a long second, he stared at the black visor. Then, with a sharp breath, he pressed it against his head. The world shifted instantly. The visor sealed over his face, lights flooding across his vision. His mind was pulled outward, his senses stretching until he wasn't just standing in the junkyard anymore. He was floating above the world, seeing through the eyes of 100 ships. He could feel the weight of their cannons, the hum of their reactors, the cold patience of their AI cores waiting for his word. The fear that had gripped him a moment ago was drowned by something else. Clarity. It wasn't knowledge in the normal sense. It was instinct. Every formation, every weapon system, every maneuver came to him as naturally as breathing. The aliens closed in, their swarm blotting out the sky. Kieran's lips moved before he realized he was speaking. Form shield wall. "Engage at will." The fleet obeyed. Ships rose into tight formations, energy shields overlapping like scales. The first barrage from the alien swarm slammed into the barrier and scattered harmlessly. A beat later, the Revenants answered. Cannons roared. Lances of blue light cut through the sky, tearing alien cruisers apart in a single strike. Fighters burst forward in disciplined waves, weaving between incoming fire with impossible precision. Kieran staggered where he stood, but the helmet's neural link held him upright. He wasn't just giving orders, he was inside the battle, every ship an extension of his will. The fleet moved with the coordination of a single living body. Still, the alien swarm did not break. They adapted quickly, weaving around the strongest fire, latching onto the flanks of Revenant cruisers like parasites. One by one, human ships flared and died, their remains falling like shooting stars into the desert below. The helmet's voice echoed again. "Enemy fleet numbers, triple ours. Probability of defeat, 82%. Recommend immediate retreat." Kieran's jaw tightened. Retreat meant abandoning the colony, his sister, Every family who had no idea death was already falling toward them. "No," he whispered. "Not retreat. Not again." The fleet shifted under his command, drawing alien cruisers into the thickest debris fields. Rusted wrecks that had slept for centuries became weapons as he guided the battle into narrow corridors of twisted steel. Several alien ships were torn open when they collided with jagged spires of ancient hulls. For the first time, the swarm faltered, and for the first time Kieran, scavenger, nobody, accidental commander, believed he might stand a chance. The desert below had become a mirror of fire. Every blast from above painted the sand in molten streaks, lighting up twisted wreckage like torches in a graveyard. Kieran stood rigid, the helmet's interface feeding him a storm of data: weapon arcs, shield flux, fighter trajectories, an overwhelming river of information. And yet somehow he could process it all. The neural link wasn't just showing him the battle. It was making him part of it. The flagship beneath him, the Iron Revenant, wasn't merely a vessel. It was alive in a way no modern ship could be. Its core resonated with his heartbeat, its guns humming with anticipation like clenched fists. When the alien swarm pressed in, he didn't think about which ship to move or which weapon to fire. He simply willed it, and the fleet obeyed. Above, the alien armada pushed harder. Their ships weren't mechanical in the traditional sense. They shifted in mid-flight, growing spines and serrated fins, their crimson-lit hulls flexing as though they were muscle and bone instead of steel. They flew in twisting patterns, almost like hunting packs, circling to flank. "Close ranks," Kieran barked, though his voice was more for himself than the AI. The Revenants responded instantly, sliding into diamond-shaped wedges, presenting fewer weak points. Enemy fire pounded the shields, turning the skies into a storm of light, but the wall held. Then he struck back. The Revenant fleet unleashed a broadside that lit the horizon. Massive beams of compressed plasma carved through the alien vanguard, snapping one cruiser in half. Fighters dove into the gaps, firing in perfect synchrony, shredding the swarm into shards of burning wreckage. The colony below shook with the thunder of ancient firepower roaring back to life after 4 centuries of silence. For a heartbeat, Kieran almost thought they could win outright. Then the swarm adapted. The aliens shifted tactics, abandoning their pursuit of the strongest Terran ships. Smaller vessels darted past the front line, slamming into vulnerable frigates along the flanks. Acid-like beams drilled into shields until they collapsed, and then the bioships swarmed, tearing hulls open as if they were prey animals being gutted. Screams cut through the comm channels as entire crews were swallowed by fire and void. Kieran's stomach knotted. The neural link carried not just the tactical map, but the sensations of his fleet. Every time a ship went dark, he felt a lurch of absence, as though a piece of his own body had been cut away. "Commander," the helmet's voice warned. Calm even as chaos mounted, enemy attrition strategy detected. "They bleed us one vessel at a time. Current survival odds declining." "Then make every loss count," Kieran snapped. His hands clenched the armrests of a chair that wasn't really there. He was standing in the junkyard. But in his mind, he was welded into the captain's throne of the Revenant. He shifted the fleet again, pulling damaged ships into the center while the heavy cruisers moved to guard the perimeter. Every maneuver was brutal but precise, designed to squeeze maximum punishment out of every engagement. If a ship was doomed, he turned it into a weapon, ordering ramming strikes, overloading reactors, anything to drag more of the enemy down with them. The aliens weren't used to such sacrifice. They hesitated, confused when prey refused to simply die quietly. The battle stretched across the sky like a tapestry of destruction. Entire swarms of alien fighters were reduced to ash in coordinated crossfire. But Kieran's fleet was shrinking just as fast. Where there had been dozens of Revenants, now there were fewer than half. His throat tightened each time another hull winked out on the map, but he refused to break. In the heat of it, flashes of memory stabbed through his mind. He wasn't just Kieran anymore. Somewhere inside him stirred fragments of Elias Valen, the original commander. Images of a final stand long ago, fleets burning, the same crimson enemy blotting out the stars. His death. His promise. This wasn't a new war. It was the same war unfinished. The AI cut in again. Commander, reinforcements will not arrive. This system is isolated. Unless you break their momentum, extinction probability exceeds 90%. Kieran gritted his teeth. Extinction wasn't an option. Not while his sister lived. Not while anyone lived. Then we hold, he growled. Even if it kills us all, we hold. He threw everything into the counterattack. Fighters dove in kamikaze runs, detonating inside alien hulls. Destroyers spun on dying engines, firing until their cores went critical. The Revenant herself unleashed salvos powerful enough to sear through 3 ships at once. The aliens wavered, their advance slowing for the first time. Humanity, battered and bloodied, refused to fall. The colony below still stood, shielded by the iron wall of ships commanded by a scavenger who had never meant to lead. But Kieran knew this was only the beginning. The swarm was vast, and what he saw here was just a fragment, and in orbit's shadow, something bigger waited to arrive. Kieran had thought the swarm pressing them was the full force, but he was wrong. A shadow fell over the battlefield, so vast it blotted out both suns. The alien mothership had arrived. It was less a vessel than a floating fortress, the size of a small moon, its surface rippling with crimson veins. Its hull was jagged and uneven, grown rather than built, like coral infected with rot. From its underbelly came a low vibration, a sound that pressed on his chest even through the helmet, like a heartbeat echoing across the void. The Revenant's AI whispered, "Confirmed, Overmind-class Leviathan. Last recorded sighting, Terran year 2260. Warning, this is the entity responsible for your previous death, Commander." Kieran froze for a heartbeat, then pushed the rising fear down. If this thing had killed Valen before, it could kill him again, unless he found a way to strike first. The mothership opened its vast, ribbed maw, releasing a tide of horrors. They weren't ships at all, not in the human sense. They were organisms twisted into weapons, swarms of spined serpents, winged predators with plasma-spewing gullets, and bulbous drones that latched onto hulls like ticks. They moved with terrifying coordination, swarming in clouds that blotted out starlight. The first wave hit hard. Smaller Revenant frigates vanished under sheer weight of numbers. Bioweapons cracked open armor with acidic mandibles, spilling crews into space. The comm channels filled with screams before abruptly cutting off. Kieran fought to keep control, forcing his fleet into layered formations. Every command drained him further. He wasn't only giving orders, he was carrying the weight of every death as though the neural link made him personally responsible for each. His jaw ached from clenching. The mothership itself did not fire. It didn't need to. It simply loomed in the distance, a black star orchestrating the slaughter. Suddenly, pain stabbed through his skull. The helmet's visor flashed crimson. For an instant, he wasn't in the battle. He was inside a memory. He saw himself, not as Kieran, but as Elias Valen. Standing on a bridge 4 centuries ago, watching this very Leviathan descend. He felt the same fear, the same weight of command. He remembered the moment of defeat, the mothership's core unleashing a shockwave that burned through entire fleets. His final order had been retreat, knowing billions would die. His death had been a delay, not salvation. Kieran gasped as the vision vanished, staggering to his knees in the junkyard dirt. His heart pounded. The past was bleeding into him, fusing who he was with who he had been. The helmet spoke, cold and merciless. The Overmind does not conquer. It consumes. Every world, every star, every living thing. 4 centuries ago, humanity delayed it with the Revenant Lance. Delay, not victory. It has returned to finish what it began. Kieran stared at the mothership dominating the sky, a storm of monsters spilling from its belly. His fleet was shrinking by the minute. This was no ordinary war. It was annihilation. Options, he demanded. Conventional weapons ineffective against Overmind class. Its core is shielded by living armor. Only the Revenant Lance, currently dormant, can pierce it. But activation risks catastrophic collateral damage. Use is forbidden by Terran Accord. Kieran laughed bitterly inside the helmet. The Accord? That's 400 years dead. Nobody's left to forbid anything. He could almost feel the AI hesitate, as if wrestling with old programming. Then it relented. Very well. Preparing Lance protocols. Warning, Charge time extended due to system decay. You must hold until sequence completes. Hold. Against that. He lifted his gaze again. The battlefield was a nightmare of burning wrecks and writhing alien bodies. But even in that chaos, human ships still fought. Scarred, limping, but firing with relentless fury. Pilots screamed battle cries as they dove straight into impossible odds. Crews sang through comms to drown out fear. Humanity had never been the strongest species, nor the fastest, but they had something else: defiance. Kieran felt it surge through him. If the lance was the only chance, then they would buy the time with blood, steel, and will. "Order to all ships," he said, his voice steady despite the firestorm raging in his veins. "We hold the line. No retreat, no surrender. Buy me time, and I'll end this thing." The Revenant fleet moved as one, throwing themselves into the tide of monsters. Destroyers rammed Leviathans twice their size. Fighters shredded themselves in suicide runs that cracked alien spines. Every loss carved another second from the countdown. The mothership's crimson veins pulsed brighter, as if sensing the threat building within the Revenant. Its swarm doubled down, hurling everything forward in a frenzy to smother humanity before the lance could awaken. In the middle of it all, Kieran stood alone in the junkyard, trembling, bleeding, but unbroken. Through the helmet, he felt every heartbeat of the fleet, every scream, every desperate push. He was one man, yet also 1,000 ships, 1,000 lives refusing to yield. The countdown ticked lower, and he knew, if the lance failed, there would be no tomorrow. The sky burned red. Kieran's body shook inside the junkyard, sweat dripping down his temples beneath the ancient helmet. Every nerve was on fire. The lance's systems were ancient, corroded by time, their power cells crippled by centuries of decay. The AI pushed the limits, redirecting every spark of surviving energy into one purpose: awakening the weapon that had once scarred the overmind. "Charging sequence at 3%, the voice whispered. "Hold position. Hold them back! Hold them back!" Humanity was doing exactly that, dying, ship by ship, to keep the monsters from breaking through. Kieran felt each loss like his own flesh tearing away. A corvette rammed a spine beast, detonating both in a sun-bright flash. A squadron of fighters streaked into the maw of a serpent, detonating inside its gut, ripping it apart. Even civilian freighters, unarmed hulks, threw themselves into the fray, ramming drones until their hulls shattered. Kieran tightened his fists. They were giving everything. He had to make it count. The mothership pulsed with malevolent life. From its underbelly, a new horror emerged. A colossus, twice the size of the largest battleship, plated in bone-white armor streaked with black veins. Its head was a nightmare skull, its mouth a furnace of plasma. It roared into the void, and the sound carried through the comms like a storm of knives. "That's a Harbinger-class Guardian," the helmet hissed. "Designed to intercept super weapons." "It knows." The Guardian lunged forward, plowing through Kieran's dwindling fleet. Missiles pounded its hide to no effect. Railguns sparked across its armor, barely scratching it. It swept its clawed forelimbs through formations, ripping ships apart as if they were toys. Every second it bought for the mothership meant death for humanity. "Target the Harbinger!" Kieran roared, forcing his voice through the storm. "Everything you've got!" What remained of the fleet obeyed. Destroyers unloaded their entire payloads at once, blasting the monster with firestorms. Fighters dove straight at its eyes, pelting it with streams of plasma. The Guardian howled, reeling but not breaking. It swung its massive tail, swatting vessels into wreckage. Still, the humans did not stop. Lance at 27%. "Hold!" Kieran grit his teeth. They couldn't last. Every ship falling was another second shaved from the clock. And still the Guardian advanced, straight toward the Lance's signal. The AI whispered, almost like a prayer. "One chance, Commander. Only one." Kieran closed his eyes. The visions of Valon flickered again. Of failure, of retreat, of leaving billions to die. Not this time. Not with him. "Open neural override," he said. "Warning, override risks fatal synaptic collapse. Do it." The world detonated inside his skull. The lance surged through him like a lightning storm, every circuit pouring raw energy into his nervous system. His scream tore through the junkyard, but his mind stretched outward, further, wider, until the battlefield itself pulsed with his heartbeat. He was the fleet. He felt every ship's thrusters as though they were his own muscles. He saw through every pilot's eyes, tasted blood and smoke with them, and he drove them like a conductor unleashing a symphony of war. The Harbinger reeled as the unified fleet hit it in perfect coordination. Fighters spiraled around its head, blinding its sensors. Destroyers drove plasma lances into the gaps between its bone plates. A battleship, already burning, hurled itself into the monster's chest, detonating its reactor in a blinding flare. The Guardian howled, staggering backward. Kieran seized the moment. He redirected the final surviving carriers, their hulls cracked and venting, into a suicide run. They struck the Harbinger together, their combined detonation ripping open its chest in a tidal wave of fire. The Guardian spasmed, screeched, then collapsed, drifting broken into the void. The mothership shrieked in reply, its crimson veins glowing white-hot with rage. "Lance at 72%. Hold." The Overmind shifted. Its maw opened, gathering a storm of energy that churned like a newborn star. The AI's voice was grave. "It is preparing to fire. If it completes, all fleets will perish." There was no more time. Kieran clenched his jaw. "Divert everything to the Lance. Skip the charge cycle." "Fire now!" Unstable. Yield unpredictable. Risk. Total planetary detonation. "Do it!" The AI hesitated, then obeyed. The Lance screamed alive, a sun igniting inside the wreck of forgotten machinery. The junkyard shook violently as ancient pylons tore themselves free of sand, glowing with rivers of white fire. The weapon gathered power beyond comprehension, light so bright it seared Kieran's retinas even through the visor. The Overmind unleashed its beam, a world-shattering torrent of plasma that split the heavens. At the same moment, the Lance fired. 2 Titans struck. The sky became white. The junkyard disintegrated around Kieran, torn into dust. The fleets vanished in the blinding collision. Space itself seemed to shatter, warping with the sheer force unleashed. For a heartbeat, Kieran felt nothing. No body, no helmet, only fire. Then silence. Darkness. And the AI's whisper. Impact achieved. Overmind's shield ruptured, but core intact. Final phase required. Kieran gasped awake, coughing blood inside the helmet. His body was broken, nerves fried, yet the battle was not over. The Overmind still lived. Smoke and silence. That was all that remained after the clash of gods. Kieran floated half-buried under scrap, lungs raw, every nerve screaming. His vision swam inside the cracked visor, the HUD flickering with dying symbols. He tried to move, but his body refused, charred and broken from channeling the Lance. Blood floated in droplets across the air, shimmering red in the fading glow of battle. But the war was not finished. Through the fractured sky, the Overmind's mothership loomed, its shield shattered, its colossal frame gutted but alive. Its veins pulsed erratic crimson, leaking fire into the void like a wounded beast. From its core, waves of distortion rippled outward, tugging at the wreckage of ships, dragging them into its gravity well. It was damaged, furious, and more dangerous than ever. Kieran forced a breath. "Status of the fleet?" The helmet answered, voice hollow. 78% destroyed. Remaining units crippled. No reinforcements. Humanity stands with less than 1,000 souls still in combat. A shiver of despair coiled in him. But it was swallowed by something harder, a steel resolve. They had cracked the monster's armor. That meant it could bleed. That meant it could die. Options. Direct core strike. Probability of success 11%. Requires manual activation inside enemy heart. Manual. Kieran laughed, though it came out as a broken cough. Of course. After centuries, after legends, after resurrection, victory would demand blood, not machines. He staggered upright. His body screamed rebellion, but the helmet braced him, its servos locking around his frame like an exosuit. Every step was agony, yet every step was forward, across the shattered yard of wreckage, toward the sky where the Overmind's shadow blotted out the sun's. Above, survivors rallied. The remaining destroyers drifted into defensive positions, shielding crippled transports. Fighters, barely holding together, harassed the mothership's weapons to buy Kieran time. Their comms flooded his mind, voices raw with pain. Fear. Courage. We'll hold as long as we can. Commander, make it count. Finish this for all of us. The helmet amplified their courage, feeding it back into him like fire in his veins. The Overmind sensed him. Its colossal eye, a burning sphere of red, turned toward the planet. Tendrils of plasma writhed, lashing the surface. Towers of scrap vaporized in an instant. The earth split, lava boiling upward. It was reaching for him, clawing at the insect who dared wound it. Kieran sprinted. The lance's ruins still pulsed with unstable power. He dove into the central shaft, a gaping wound that yawned open from the earlier discharge. The AI guided him deeper, down into darkness, where ancient cables sparked and conduits hissed steam. Every corridor twisted like a throat, organic metal hybrids fused from centuries of alien corruption. Creatures stirred within the ship. Drones groaned from flesh and steel, shrieking as they sensed the intruder. They swarmed, claws clicking, eyes burning with Overmind's will. Kieran met them with fire. His gauntlet spat bolts of plasma, each shot fueled by his fury. He tore through them in brutal silence, limbs moving with mechanical precision guided by the helmet's link. When one beast clamped its jaws on his shoulder, he ripped free, letting blood and sparks spray together. Nothing slowed him. He reached the core chamber at last. It was a cathedral of horror. Vast pillars of bone and alloy arched toward a pulsing sphere, molten light beating within. The Overmind's heart throbbed like a sun caged in glass. Around it, veins pumped streams of energy, stolen life from the worlds it had devoured. The helmet whispered, "This is the end, Commander. Your body cannot survive the overload. Do you accept?" Kieran stared at the core. He thought of his sister's coughing, of the children hiding in shelters across the colonies, of the billions who would never see tomorrow if he failed. His lips curled in a ragged smile. "I died 412 years ago, remember? This is just catching up." He tore the helmet free from his head. For a moment, he was just Kieran again. No commander, no legend. Just a man. He slammed the helmet into the core, driving it deep until the circuits fused with alien veins. The AI screamed through his mind one final time. Lance energy rerouted. Final detonation locked. Goodbye, Commander. Light swallowed everything. The core ruptured in silence too immense for sound. A shockwave of white fire ripped outward, vaporizing drones, tearing through the mothership's body like paper. The Overmind howled across every channel, its voice breaking into static as it dissolved in a storm of brilliance. The heavens lit with a supernova of man-made fury. From orbit, survivors watched the impossible. The mothership imploded, folding inward, then exploded in a radiant bloom that outshone both suns. Debris scattered like dying stars. For the first time in centuries, the Overmind was gone. But so was Kieran. Only fragments of his signal remained, scattered across the comms like echoes of thunder. Yet his last words lingered, carried in every survivor's memory, etched into human history. Fight until the end. Humanity stands. Silence followed. Then cheers. Then tears. The battered fleet turned toward the colonies with broken hulls, fewer numbers, but unbroken spirit. They had won not with numbers, not with strength, but with will. Humanity lived, and in the junkyard where it began, only ash remained.